Welcome to the next set of notes for Math 135, Intro to Stats at CCD. In this section, we're going to cover Module 4, Part 4, looking at the 5-number summary and box plots. So the first thing we're going to look at is the 5-number summary. 5-number summary consists of 5 numbers. We have the minimum or the smallest number. You have the first quartile, which we learned about in the last section. You have the median, also known as Q2 or the second quartile. You have Q3, the third quartile, and you have the maximum. So we're going to go ahead and look at an example data set. We're going to use this data set for the 5-number summary as well as the box plot that we're going to construct afterwards. So we have this data set here. I don't have any context around this data set. Looks like it could represent test scores again. But we don't really need context here. So we're going to go ahead and find our 5-number summary for this data set. First thing we need to find is the minimum or the smallest number. Now I was nice again, and these are already in order for you, so we can see quickly that our minimum is 50. And I'm going to go ahead and do the maximum as well, because that one's quick and easy to find. So the maximum is 92. So now I want to go ahead and find the median. Remember, you have to find the median before you can find the 2 quartiles. So the median, I'm going to find out how many values I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9. There are 10, so that means it's going to be the average of 2 middle numbers. So n over 2 and n over 2 plus 1. So I need to find the 5th and the 6th values. 10 over 2 is 5, 10 over 2 plus 1 is 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that gives me 74 and 76. So the average of those two numbers is 75. So now I can go ahead and look at everything less than 75. And when we do this, we're going to include 74 in that lower half. Because 74 is not the median. It was used to find the median, but it is not actually the median itself. So now I'm looking at everything less than 75, so 74, 72, 72, 68, and 50, and I need to find the middle of this. Now I could use the equation n plus 1 over 2, which would tell me, let's see, we have 5, so that would be 6 over 2, which is the third position, which is 72. It's also pretty obvious when you only have 5 numbers what number is in the middle. So my first quartile is 72. And then finally, we're going to do the third quartile. Oop, I've already done a lot of blue. Hang on, I'm sorry. Let's do red. So that's going to be everything above that 75, including the 76. And now here we can see that our median is 81. So that is the 5-number summary for a data set. So minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, and the maximum. So now we're going to look at how to draw a box plot. There are lots of steps to drawing a box plot. I'm going to go through these steps as I'm drawing the box plot on this next page. So we're going to use the data from example 1 to find the box plot, or to create the box plot, I'm sorry. So the first thing I need to do is I need to draw a number line. I'm going to do that in black. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a line across the page. It needs to start at least as low as my smallest number, so my minimum was 50, and it needs to go at least as high as my largest number, which is 92. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start at 50, and I'm going to end at 100. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some tick marks in here, just so that I have an approximate scale. We want this to be equal sizes. Mine are not really. They're not too bad. Okay, and then if you wanted to put in the 5s in there as well, you could. So all I've done so far is drawn a number line. The minimum value is at least as small as my minimum, and the maximum value on this number line is at least as large as my maximum. That way I'll be able to fit all of this information I have up here onto my box plot down here. Because a box plot is a visual representation of the 5-number summary. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take my Q2, which was 75, and I'm going to draw a vertical line at 75. And I'll try and keep the colors the same. So I did Q2 in blue. So I'm going to draw above my box plot, just like that. Okay. So now I'm going to do the same thing for my Q1 and my Q3. So my Q1 was 72 and my Q3 was 81. So 72 is going to be about here. We want these to be about the same size. They should also be straight. Oops. And then my Q3 was 81, so that's going to be over here. All right, now at this point what I want to do is I want to connect my purple line for my my Q1 to the red line for my Q3. So I'm just going to connect this, and I'm going to create the box part of my box plot. And my Q3 line's a little bit long. Normally I would go in and erase. I don't have a way to erase in this app. Okay, so that is we kind of skipped step 1. I'm going to come back to step 1. So I've done step 2, and now we're going to move up to step 3. So it says to temporarily label the upper and lower fence, so we need to calculate those upper and lower fences. So the upper and lower fence is what we're going to use to determine if we have any outliers. Okay, so let's do this in green. So the upper fence equation is Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. And then the lower fence is Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. So in order to find this, I need to first go and find the IQR, and then I can do this math. So remember, the IQR from the last section of notes is Q3 minus Q1. So IQR is going to be 81 minus 72. So I'll do that down here as well. Let's do it in black. IQR equals 81 minus 72, which is 9. So now I can use all the information that I have to find my upper and lower fences. So for the upper fence, our Q3 was 81 plus 1.5 times 9. Make sure you do the 1.5 times 9 first, then you add it to the 81. If you do the 81 plus 1.5, then multiply that by 9, you're going to get the wrong answer. So when we do this, we get 94.5. And then our lower fence is going to be our 72 minus 1.5 times 9. So 1.5 times 9, 72, and that gives us 58.5. Yep. So now we have an upper fence and a lower fence. So we're going to use these to determine if we have any outliers. So an outlier is an extreme value that has been proven to be very extreme, basically. So we're going to go ahead and mark these with some temporary brackets. So 94.5 is the first one. So that's going to be about here. And then the other one was 58.5. So that's going to be about here. Perfect. So those are temporary. Those are going to get erased later. All right. So now I can move on to the next step. So now I need to look and see if I have any outliers. So 94.5 was my upper fence. Do I have any data values larger than 94.5? No. 92 is less than 94.5, so I don't have an outlier there. But then the other fence, the lower fence, was 58.5. And I do have a number less than that fence. I have this 50 here. So 50 is going to be an outlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my bar graph, or I'm sorry, my box plot. And I'm going to mark that outlier with an asterisk or a star. So on the 50 right here, and I'm just going to mark a star. That says that I have a data value of 50 and it is an outlier. So now the last step of my box plot is to connect my Q3 to my maximum and my Q1 to my minimum. So my maximum was 92. So I'm going to come in here. Let's just do black. So I'm going to find about 92, which is going to be about right here. I'm just going to draw a small vertical line, and then I'm going to connect these two lines. Now this is where it gets tricky. Because 50 was an outlier, we have to look at the next smallest number. In this case, it is 68. So 68 is going to be marked like the minimum on my box plot. So I'm going to go down here back to my box plot. I'm going to find where 68 is, which is about here. I'm going to draw a line, and then I'm going to connect it to my Q1. And then at this point, you can go in and you can erase the temporary brackets that you created. Okay. So let me see if I can make this thicker to erase it faster. Okay, so erase that and erase that. Perfect. And now we have our completed box plot. And then the last step, which is optional, is you can go in and you can label everything. So we would label this as an outlier. This is our Q1, Q2, Q3, and our maximum. I don't want to label this guy as the minimum because he's not our minimum. Our minimum is still 50. He's still the smallest value in our data set. He just also happens to be an outlier. So in the past, I've labeled this as like a new minimum, but that just confused everyone. So what we're just going to do is we're going to say we have an outlier, and that's our minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, and the maximum. And then this guy right here is just not going to get labeled. We're just going to ignore him. Oops. Sorry. Oh, no. Well, I guess I'm going to relabel all of that. So we have the outlier. Nothing gets labeled here. Q1, Q2, Q3, and the maximum. Close that so I don't accidentally mess it up again. All right, and that is my box plot. You don't have to do the colors. I was trying to do colors to make it a little bit easier to follow where some of these numbers came from. You can do it all in one color, that's fine. And then remember some of the things from the last section. So the IQR is Q3 minus Q1, and that's the range of 50% of our data. So that means from this purple box or this purple line up to the red line, everything in the box, half of my data is contained within that box. And then from the red Q3 to the max, that's 25% of my data. And from the purple line all the way down to the outlier, that's another 25% of my data. So just remember those because those may be questions that come up in your homework. Equations for upper fence and lower fence. Okay. And then this is a box plot, a visual representation of the 5-number summary, which consisted of the minimum, the Q1, the Q2, the Q3, and the maximum. And that's it for these notes.